Hello. Today we're going to discuss some new concepts as it relates to the political economy in Africa, particularly in post-colonial Africa, which is the subject that we've been looking at. We're going to discuss the concepts of neo-patrimonialism, which you will have encountered in your readings in the Van der Walle book. We're also going to be discussing what is euphemistically known as big man politics in post-colonial Africa. Big man politics, could be used as a pejorative term, which it often is, but it's also a fact of political life in Africa because of the predominance of very autocratic gentlemen who've ruled a number of countries for a very long time. So first thing we should do, though, is discuss what is meant by patrimonialism. This is a concept which was first defined by the German political sociologist Max Weber, and he called it a system of power and influence under the direct control of a single ruler or a small elite, in which favors and power are granted at the personal whim of the leader, not through any merit, and certainly not through any system of recognition or promotion. So it's very much a personal way of ruling, and that that was pretty much characterized what it was like living during the ages of the great kings. And we also read about patrimonial rule in Why Nations Fail in the first reading of the course. So when we talk about a patrimonial system, though, we're talking about something which is in contrast to the system which we live under, which could be characterized as a rational legal system, where the power of rulers and elites are constrained by checks and balances. For instance, in the case of the United States, we have a Constitution, we have a Bill of Rights. If we think back to the Glorious Revolution, which was talked about in Why Nations Fail, this was the first time in British history where there was an attempt to put some constraints upon upon the monarchy. So patrimonialism is it's a historical concept. It's something which has pretty much sort of disappeared. However, it's been replaced by a system which Van der Walle characterizes as neo-patrimonialism. Now, when we talk about neo, we're talking about first we're talking about the word. Neo means something which is new or revived, and it refers to a mode of governing that includes elements of both that traditional patrimonial system as well as the systems of a modern bureaucratic state. In other words, neo-patrimonial system rulers use the apparatus of state institutions as well as the resources of the state, which, by the way, typically should belong to the people of the country, but they use those resources for personal enrichment and to secure their power base. People who study these patrimonial systems also point out that these types of systems are often fragile and corrupt. Now, if we look at contemporary African politics, modern African politics, I should say, we have a number of very famous big men who ruled their countries in a very patrimonial way. In Uganda we had the very famous Idi Amin, who came to power in a military coup, who ruled, as basically a despot and created a very, very unpleasant and actually reactive state in Uganda during the course of his rule. We had the very famous Mobutu Sese Seko in Congo, who is almost a poster child for neo-patrimonialism. They had, just one fake election after another, while his group, his cronies, his family basically plundered the treasury of the Congo. More recently, we've seen the end of the rule of Blaise Compaoré in Burkina Faso. He ruled for about 30 years. He was just deposed last year in this very small French-speaking country, but it's quite significant that this one individual was able to hold on to power for so long, as well as having the edifice of democracy and elections, which really were a sham and did not really produce a political opposition of any kind. Then we have in Equatorial Guinea the Obiang family. They are notorious exploiters of oil resources, for their own enrichment. There's, despite the enormous wealth of Equatorial Guinea on paper, there's been very little development in the country, while the family and the cronies, the group around Obiang have prospered wildly. In Ghana, you had Jerry Rawlings, who was a kind of low-ranking military officer who also came to power in a military coup and ruled Ghana for a number of years with a very iron fist. Basically eliminated political opposition by killing them, and did not, at least during his time, make any moves towards an inclusive system. So these big men are, classic examples of neo-patrimonial rule, of extractive political and economic systems. And they basically justified their rule by saying that either that they were great beneficiaries to the people, which in all cases was a lie, or that that they're if it weren't for them, the country would descend into chaos, which also was not exactly a lie, but certainly a little bit of a self-serving perspective. Certainly in the case of Congo, after Mobutu was deposed, the country did descend into chaos. Not so the case in Uganda, not so the case so far in Burkina Faso. Mr. Obiang is actually still, and his family is still in power, so it's too early to tell. And Ghana has actually turned the corner and is really making moves towards developing a more inclusive, both political and economic system. So when we talk about big man politics, when we talk about this kind of neo-patrimonial systems, they're often characterized by the following sort of qualities. And there's our man Saddam Hussein, who was also a perfect example of a big man politician, of a neo-patrimonial leader. So we can say these types of systems are often corrupt. They're autocratic. They're the style of rule is violence. There's tremendous amount of greed on the part of the inner circle. There's tremendous mendacity and lying towards both towards the people and to the external world about really what's going on. As a tremendous lack of transparency, and this sort of notion of pomposity. These neo-patrimonial rulers build themselves up as, sort of portraying themselves as the embodiment of the state or the embodiment of the people, and it's all usually turns out to be a really tragic lie, if not a farce in some cases. So, and we can certainly think of Saddam Hussein and these enormous palaces that he had, and the violence that he visited upon his own people. So when we talk about this neo-patrimonial types of rulers, and we look at them in sort of the overall argument that Vandewala is presenting in his book, we see that for the international community, having these types of neo-patrimonial rulers in place is problematic, because they're often very good at manipulating elections so that it gives the appearance of democracy, and it allows sort of the international community, the donors, if you will, off the hook, because they look at these countries and say, oh, well, they're having elections, therefore they can't be too bad, we'll keep giving them money. But these elections are often just shams. And then once these rulers get into power, they fail to provide public goods and services. Sometimes they just simply tell the international community, well, we have no money, you need to provide health care, you need to provide food aid. While at the same time, these elite groups are plundering the economy and moving their money into private businesses or offshore bank accounts. But all of this obviously would make these regimes unpopular and unstable, subject to coups, which, if you've studied the history of West Africa in the last 30 years, there's been just an enormous number of government changes that are brought about by violent coups. And overall, this creates a very vicious circle of bad governance, because these patterns get repeated from one leader to another, and they would continue doing it until a true reformer appears. But those have been few and far between. In fact, it's very difficult to even find, to make a case for, one serious reformer who's emerged in this part of the world to significantly transform the nature of governance. So in any case, at the end of the day, these international donors have to deal with an elected government, unless it's grotesquely dysfunctional. So, for instance, a place like Somalia would not necessarily be on the first list of donors' places to invest, because simply their investment it's very difficult to protect the investment. If the international community is kept out, either through violence or through policy, it makes it very difficult to influence these bad governments, or to influence even the people who are interested in transforming these bad governments, and that goes on to further cement the power and influence of these governments. So, neo-patrimonialism and big man politics are at the source, the root of a lot of the problems in the political economy of West Africa, and not only in West Africa, other parts of West Africa, but also we've seen the same patterns in Asia and in Latin America. But it's very important that you understand what the notion of neo-patrimonialism is, and why it's problematic for reformers and for the international for the international community. So, thanks.